Hey, I'm Jerome and welcome to the Gaming Corner. Today I have a review for a game where you play as battle-ready Vikings, arriving on new shores, building your settlements, growing and dominating other tribes until one of you become the victor. And this game is Fjords. Fjords is a 2 to 4 player competitive tile laying area control game, and this specific version is by Grail Games. Grail Games made and reprint an updated version of the original 2005 version. In Fjords, you play as one of 4 Viking clans, and to win, it's whoever controls the majority of the island. To do this, it's whoever occupies the most amount of hexes on the map. The game is split into 2 phases. In the first phase, players will take turns going clockwise, selecting one of the 4 available tiles. After selecting the tile, the player will then place it on the map in a legal position. By this, I mean A. Tiles must be touching at least 2 other tiles. B. The tile sides must align geographically. So, the water with water, mountain with mountain, and field with field. And C. It can't create another island, even if you plan on connecting them. When placing these tiles, the player then has an option to place one of their 4 long huts on the tile that they just placed down. These long huts are important, but I'll explain why in the second phase. Players will continue in clockwise order until all the tiles are placed. Then is the second phase. Here, players will continue in the clockwise order, placing the Vikings one at a time. When placing a Viking, a player can place their Viking either adjacent to one of their long huts that they placed in the first phase, or adjacent to one of their other Vikings. However, even if it is adjacent, you can't place a Viking over water or over a mountain. This will go on until all the places on the board are filled. Players will then calculate who controls the most amount of hexes, and that player wins. And that's it. The game's pretty easy. It's quick to teach and quick to play, and at first it seems a bit too easy, but the more you play, you'll learn there's a bit more hidden depths to it as you develop more strategies. But I'll get more into that a bit later. Before I get into my thoughts, I just want to explain the difference between this version and the 2005 version. Other than the component upgrade, there's about 3 main differences when it comes to gameplay. The first difference is that the game changed from just a 2-player game to a 2 to 4-player game. The second change is for the Epic Battle game mode. This is for when 2 players want to play on the scale of a 4-player game. It allows each player to have more meeples and more tiles, so just the game is more bigger and a little bit more complex. And then finally is the third change, which I would argue is the biggest change of all, which is the Ruin expansion. The Ruins add a bit more variety to the game and a bit more complexity by adding different ways of scoring and giving players one-off abilities that they can use throughout the game. I won't go through all the Ruins, but I'll give you an example of some of them so you get an idea of what they can add to the game. Here we have the Friendship Ruin. The way this works is that whoever has the most meeples adjacent to it by the end of the game would then score an additional 2 points. Here we have the Horse Ruin. To use this ruin, you would discard it during the second phase. This will allow you to place a meeple on the other side of a mountain, which normally you wouldn't be able to. Alright, let's get into the things I like about the game. First I want to talk about the artwork and the component quality. I think Grail Games did a great job at updating the game from the original 2005 version. I think a lot of the artwork and component qualities are a good upgrade. Inclusions of things like this bag. Although it's not the best quality, it's still a nice material and is a nice size compared to some other games that give you bags that are a little bit too small to fit your hand in. These tiles have beautiful artwork with lots of little details, like animals, plants, and lakes. The little details make the map look alive by the end of the match, and make it a joy during the first place as you build it out. The tiles also have a UV glaze on the ocean. Not only does it look wet, but it also helps to add depth to the whole map. I also really like that this game is simple to play and simple to teach. Because sometimes you get games that are simple to play but hard to teach. An example of this is Decrypto. I like the game, but I really hate teaching it. It takes a few games to get in before people actually understand what the game is. But when it comes to Fjords, you don't really have that issue. People understand it within a minute or 2. And saying that, at first the game seems a bit too simple. It feels like the game is just a bit random and you don't really have any control over it. But the more you play, the more you learn that there's a bit more hidden depth to it. that there's strategies when it comes to placing your tiles or placing your long huts or your Vikings. And not only that, with the addition of the ruins, it allows you to add complexity where you want it. I really love that even the rulebook has a system of adding in these ruins one by one. It allows people who are still new to board games to take their time with learning the rules and adding complexity as they want. Okay, now when it comes to things that I don't like about the game, honestly there's not too much that I don't like. And most of the things I'm going to say about a bit more nitpicks rather than things that are actually negative aspects. But the first thing I want to mention is these meeples. So, although I do like them as a meeple, I don't necessarily like it for this game where you're playing as Vikings, because these meeples look more like farmers. When you're using these meeples in the game, it feels like you're just playing as farmers having a dispute about whose land belongs to who. Which honestly is fine, but since the game says you're Vikings, it just like kind of takes away a bit from that. But as a quick side note, if you actually own Blood Rage, you actually have enough figurines to play a 2-player game if that interests you with a bit more immersive nature to it. I don't know. Next, I'll probably say this is the biggest criticism I have of the game, and this is during the second phase as you're placing down your Vikings. Because sometimes as you're placing down your Vikings, you realize at a certain point, a player is going to win. And it makes it really anticlimactic because you're just placing it down until they win. Luckily, however, the game is pretty quick, so when it does happen, it just takes a bit of time, just a few turns and then it's over. So, does the game achieve what it's trying to achieve? I'd say yes, and I would probably say yes in two different ways. So first is just the game as a whole. I think the game succeeds at trying to be an entry-level area control game that, although is simple, still has room for decision making and strategy. The second way that I feel that the game achieves what it's trying to achieve is the fact that it's a remake. I think Grail Games did a great job at updating the original game. They really improved upon the art and the components, but what I really enjoy is that the updates on the game mechanics. I think allowing up to 4 players was a really great choice, and the addition of the ruins added both depth and strategy to the game. So saying that, I give this game a 7.3. I think this game is a good game, especially what I like to call a coffee game. For me, a coffee game is a game that I can play in the morning that's easy to set up, easy to tear down, that I can have over a cup of coffee without it being too much stress. I think this game is nice to look at and nice to play, but I think its main downfall is its lack of depth in both gameplay and strategy. At first, it's kind of like a roller coaster. At first, it feels like there's not much, and then you learn a bit more strategy and depth, but the more you play it, then it starts falling down again. So, as long as you're not playing it too much, then I think it's a nice, just easy to get into game, as long as you're not playing it too much, otherwise then it might start to get boring. So, I would recommend this game to anybody that's either new to the hobby or looking for a nice filler game. For me personally, I also think that it's like a nice gift for anybody at any skill range, because either it looks nice or it's a nice entry. But I wouldn't recommend the game to anybody that's looking for a more in-depth area control game. For the next step up, I'd probably recommend something like Blood Rage. And thank you for making it all the way to the end. I hope this video helped you decide if this game was right or not for you. If you're liking what I'm doing, please leave a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for the next game or suggestions in general, just leave a comment. My name is Jerome, and I'll catch you next time in the Gaming Corner.